to what you're naturally good at.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical. So how does this even work? How do they go from fingerprints to telling you about your talents?
So it's not like those personality tests where you answer a bunch of questions. This is strictly biometric. They actually take scans of all 10 of your fingers.
Wow, all 10.
Yep. And then that data, those fingerprint images, get fed into some specialized software. And this software crunches the data, analyzes the patterns, and spits out a report. Pretty detailed one from what I've seen.
And this report, what does it actually tell you?
Well, it aims to give you a breakdown of your inherent qualities, like your personality traits, your capabilities, and of course your talents. Like, what are you naturally inclined towards? What are your strengths? And maybe even some areas where you might need a little extra support.
So it's like a personalized guide to your inner potential, all based on your fingerprints.
That's the idea anyway.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do fingerprints, those tiny ridges on our fingertips, how are they supposedly connected to what's going on inside our brains?
This is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit controversial too. The core idea is that there's a direct link between your fingerprint patterns and the way your brain is wired. So your talents, they're literally at your fingertips.
Huh, fascinating concept.
Right. And they break it down even further. They say the fingerprints on your left hand, they're linked to the right side of your brain. And that side, it's often associated with things like emotions, creativity, artistic abilities.
So if you're a lefty with super swirly fingerprints, you're destined to be the next Picasso.
Well, not quite that simple, but you get the idea. And then on the flip side, they say your right hand's fingerprints, those are connected to the left side of your brain. And that's more the realm of logic, intelligence, verbal skills, all that good stuff.
Okay, so left hand, right brain, creative stuff. Right hand, left brain, logic and smarts. I'm starting to get it. But how detailed does this analysis get? Do they just look at your hands as a whole, or do they zoom in on each finger?
They actually go finger by finger, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. So each individual fingerprint gets scrutinized, analyzed for its unique patterns, and that's how they claim to build this super detailed picture of your potential strengths and weaknesses, like which qualities are really well developed and which areas might need a bit of extra attention or guidance.
So you're telling me each finger has its own little story to tell about our talents. But these fingerprints, they don't change over time, do they? Like, when do we even get them?
You're right, fingerprints are pretty much set for life. And you know what? They form way earlier than you might think. It starts in the womb, around week 13 of pregnancy.
Wow, that's incredible.
And by week 22, they're fully formed. Those unique patterns are there to stay. And the key point here is that they're believed to be based on your intrinsic genetic makeup. Like, it's part of who you are from the very beginning.
So they're saying these fingerprints, they're a window into your innate potential, your genetic blueprint. Okay, let's say all of this is true, that our fingerprints can really reveal these hidden talents. What are the practical benefits of taking this DMIT test? Like, why should our listeners even consider it?
Well, according to the information you've gathered, there are quite a few potential advantages. For starters, it could be really insightful for parents. Imagine getting a glimpse into your child's natural abilities, understanding their strengths, and maybe even spotting potential challenges early on.
That could be a game changer for parents who are trying to figure out how best to support their kids.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding out if your kid's a math whiz or a language genius. DMIT is supposed to go beyond that.
Yeah.
It looks at all sorts of intelligences, like musical talent, spatial reasoning, social skills, things that traditional tests might not even pick up on.
So it's a more holistic view of a child's potential, not just focusing on academics.
Right. And when it comes to career planning, DMIT could be a useful starting point. It can help you figure out which fields align with your natural strengths, whether you're just starting out or even if you're considering a career change later in life.
So it's not just for teenagers who are trying to decide what they want to be when they grow up.
Not at all. The sources suggest it can be beneficial for people of all ages. Adults can use it for self-reflection, to see if their current career path is truly tapping into their natural talents, or if a switch might lead to more fulfillment and job satisfaction. Teenagers can use it to guide their academic choices, and university students can use it to explore different career options that resonate with their inherent strengths.
Oh.
And get this, with online options available, it's easier than ever to access these detailed reports, even from the comfort of your own home.
So DMIT is potentially a tool for self-discovery, for understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and for making informed decisions about your education and career. But let's be practical here. How much does this all cost? Is it going to break the bank?
Well, the information we have is specific to India, and it seems the price can range from about 5,900 rupees to 8,000 rupees, depending on the specific test format and the center you choose. But they really emphasize picking a reputable career counseling center, one that holds the U.S. patent for the DMIT test.
That makes sense. You want to make sure you're getting accurate results, especially if you're going to base important decisions on them.
Absolutely. And they frame the cost as an investment in your future, in making informed decisions that could ultimately lead to more success and happiness in your career and life.
Okay, so we've talked about what DMIT is, how it works, and what it might cost. But what about the downsides? Are there any potential negative things to consider before you go ahead and get your fingerprints scanned and analyzed?
Well, interestingly, the sources we have don't really paint a negative picture of the test itself. They say biometric assessments, like fingerprint scanning, are generally considered harmless, with no adverse side effects.
So physically, it seems pretty safe.
Right. But they do highlight the responsibility of the career counselors who are interpreting those results. It's crucial that they do so accurately and ethically, and that they recommend helpful strategies for personal development, not just hand you a report and say, figure it out.
So the potential downsides are more about the human element, the interpretation and guidance, rather than the test itself.
Exactly.
Okay, let's recap for our listeners. If we were to sum up the key takeaways about DMIT, what would those be?
All right, so pulling it all together, DMIT is a biometric analysis that looks for a connection between your fingerprints and your potential genetic intelligence, traits, even personality tendencies. It's based on the idea that those tiny ridges on your fingertips are somehow linked to your brain function.
A sort of map of your inner landscape, hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. And by analyzing these patterns, it aims to identify your inherent strengths, maybe some weaknesses too, and offer insights that could be useful for career planning, personal growth, that sort of thing.
And it's not age restricted. Anyone can take it, whether they're a student figuring out their path or an adult considering a career change.
Right. And while it can be done online, the sources stress the importance of choosing a reputable counseling center, one that uses reliable technology to ensure those results are as accurate as possible.
So there's a lot of potential there. But as with anything that sounds this intriguing, we also need to be cautious, right? The information you looked at raised some red flags, some things to be wary of when it comes to DMIT.
Yeah, there are definitely some important cautions to keep in mind. And the biggest one is this. While DMIT is presented as having a scientific basis, there's still debate in the wider scientific community about how accurately fingerprint patterns can predict things as complex as intelligence and personality.
So it's not quite a slam dunk in terms of scientific proof.
Right. And that's why it's so important not to rely solely on DMIT findings, without also looking for solid scientific studies that support its claims. It's best to view it as one piece of the puzzle, one data point among many, and to combine it with more established methods like psychometric tests and traditional career assessments.
So don't put all your eggs in the DMIT basket. Use it as a tool, but don't let it dictate your life choices. What else should our listeners be cautious about?
Another big one is the qualifications and experience of the person who's administering and interpreting the test. If they don't have a strong background in psychology and career counseling, there's a real risk of misinterpretation, of getting advice that might not be helpful or even steer you in the wrong direction.
So it's not just about the technology, the fingerprint scanning. The human element, the expertise of the counselor is just as important, if not more so.
Absolutely. And it's also worth noting that while a good DMIT report should offer personalized insights, some providers might give very generic information that doesn't really take into account your unique background, experiences, and aspirations.
So it's crucial to make sure you're getting a personalized interpretation, not just a cookie-cutter analysis.
Right. And remember, DMIT should be a tool to inform your decisions, not make them for you. It's about adding to your self-awareness, not handing over control.
Speaking of decisions, what about those big life choices, like picking a career path? How much weight should people give to DMIT results when making those kinds of decisions?
That's a great question. And it's where caution is really key. It can be tempting to base major decisions solely on what a DMIT report says, without considering your own evolving interests, the skills you've developed over time, and real-world experience in different fields.
It's about finding that balance between what the test suggests and what your gut tells you.
Exactly. DMIT can offer insights, but it shouldn't override your own intuition, your passions, your experiences. It's best to use it alongside career aptitude tests, get advice from experienced professionals, and most importantly, try things out in the real world before committing to a specific path.
And how can listeners even know if the DMIT service they're considering is providing reliable information? Is there anything they can look for?
That's a valid concern. Unfortunately, not all DMIT providers are created equal. Some might not be very transparent about the data or research that backs up their claims. They might not have up-to-date statistics or case studies to demonstrate their effectiveness.
So it's buyer beware.
In a way, yes. To navigate this, look for providers who specifically mention using data-backed research, and don't hesitate to ask for success stories, testimonials, or relevant statistics before putting too much faith in their recommendations.
Asking the right questions is key. And the information you looked at, it actually provided some specific tips for using DMIT effectively. Can you share some of those with our listeners?
Absolutely. There were 13 tips in total, but some of the most important ones are: first, choose a certified GMIT consultant, someone who has credentials in psychology or neuroscience, not just someone who knows how to operate the scanning equipment.
So qualifications matter.
Big time. And second, don't be afraid to ask about the scientific research that supports the DMIT claims. If a provider can't point to any solid studies, that's a red flag.
Don't just take their word for it. Dig a little deeper.
Exactly. And third, always use DMIT as one tool among many. Combine it with other assessments, other sources of information. Don't treat it as the be-all and end-all.
It's about getting a comprehensive picture, not relying on a single data point.
Precisely. And it's also wise to seek out providers who can show you data, case studies, real-world examples that support their analysis. And don't underestimate the value of getting input from other experts, like career coaches and psychologists.
It's about getting a well-rounded perspective, not just a one-sided view. Now, you mentioned some perspectives from experts in related fields. What did they have to say about DMIT?
Right, we have a quote from Dr. Howard Gardner, the guy behind the theory of multiple intelligences. He basically cautions against replacing holistic assessments of a person's abilities with just dermatoglyphics.
So he's saying it's a piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture.
Exactly. He emphasizes that intelligence is multifaceted, and we need to consider all those facets, not just what our fingerprints might suggest.
And what about someone who's actually studied DMIT in depth?
Well, we have Dr. Chen Yimu, a neuroscientist who's done research on dermatoglyphics and DMIT. He sees dermatoglyphics as a legitimate area of study with a connection between fingerprints and brain development. He even believes DMIT has potential for understanding natural talents.
So he's more optimistic about its potential.
But he also emphasizes that its value hinges on accurate interpretation and using it in conjunction with other assessment methods. Again, it's about balance and a holistic approach.
So even among experts, there are different viewpoints, different levels of acceptance. That's good to know. Now, you also mentioned some statistics about DMIT and career counseling. What did those tell us?
The numbers are pretty interesting. According to one study, 85% of people who received career counseling that incorporated DMIT reported feeling more confident in their career choices afterward.
So it seems like it can boost confidence in decision-making.
That's the suggestion, yes. And about 65% felt that combining DMIT with traditional career counseling techniques was beneficial. So there's a sense that it can add value to the process.
It's not necessarily replacing those traditional methods, but rather complementing them.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that while the use of fingerprint analysis in neurology for studying cognitive development is still being debated, it's found a niche in the field of career guidance.
So it's making its mark in a specific area, even if the broader scientific community isn't fully on board yet. Now, I know you also looked at some real-world examples, case studies of people who actually used DMIT. Can you tell us about Priya's story?
Yeah, Priya's case is a good example of how DMIT can potentially help with career decisions. She was 16, unsure about what path to take. Her parents were pushing for engineering, but she wasn't into math and science.
Classic scenario. Parents want one thing, kids want another.
Right, so she took the DMIT test, and the results pointed to strong linguistic and creative abilities.
Not exactly engineering material.
Nope. So after some career counseling, Priya decided to explore digital marketing and content writing, fields that aligned with her strengths. And according to the source, she ended up finding success in those areas.
So DMIT helped her break free from the path her parents had envisioned and find a direction that was more in tune with her natural abilities.
Exactly. It's not about the test dictating her choices, but rather providing information that helped her make a more informed decision, a decision that ultimately led to a positive outcome.
It's about empowerment, about using the information to guide you towards a path that feels right for you. And I believe you had a couple of other quick examples from an organization called LetzStudy.
Yeah, there was Ranjith, a student who was unsure about his academic path. The DMIT highlighted his strong logical and analytical skills, which helped him confidently choose science, focusing on engineering and data science. Then there was Yashas, a university student who was struggling with his grades. The DMIT revealed he was a kinesthetic learner, meaning he learned best through hands-on experiences. So he incorporated more hands-on study methods, and his grades improved significantly.
So it helped him adapt his learning style to better suit his natural strengths.
Exactly. And finally, there was Sporthe, a high school student with a wide range of interests. The DMIT emphasized her strong interpersonal and linguistic intelligence, which led her to pursue a successful career in mass communication.
So 3 different individuals, 3 different paths, but in each case, DMIT provided information that helped them make more informed decisions about their education and careers.
That's the key takeaway, really. It's about using this tool as a guide, as a source of information, to help you understand yourself better and make choices that align with your natural strengths and potential.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of DMIT, the Dermatoglyphics Multiple Intelligence Test. We've explored what it is, how it works, the science behind it, the potential benefits, and the important cautions to keep in mind.
It's a complex topic with a mix of intriguing possibilities and potential pitfalls.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide whether or not DMIT is something they want to explore further. But armed with the knowledge we've shared today, you can at least approach it with a more informed and critical perspective.
And who knows, maybe it'll spark some deeper self-reflection, some curiosity about your own hidden talents and potential.
That's what we hope for here on the Deep Dive. To inspire curiosity, to encourage critical thinking, and to empower you to make informed decisions about your life.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this question to ponder. Considering the possibility that your unique physical characteristics might hold clues to your inherent abilities, what avenues of self-discovery might you be inspired to explore further?
That's your food for thought this week. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.